If there is anything that Canadians want the world to know, it's that we are not Americans. We might watch all the same TV shows. We might follow their politics. We might even debate their politics. But we're not Americans. We love to vacation there. We love a lot of things about America. But we're not Americans. Now, at this point, you're probably thinking, I'm going to show how we are Americans. And the reality is that there really are far more similarities between Canadians and Americans than most Canadians want to admit. And that's fine. Americans are great. Nothing wrong with Americans. I'm married to one. However, I actually am going to hold with this stereotype because as much as Canadians want to insist that, we're not the baby brother or any of those sort of things, we really do have some differences. And when it comes to things like business, particularly in marketing, these differences matter. They're actually very important. But before we get into that, welcome. This is my first go at this. Hopefully I have your attention. Hopefully I can keep it. I'm going to give this a go here, all right? It's my first little crack at this. My name is Ryan McMillan, and I'm a marketing professional. Just to let you know a little bit about who I am a Canadian. I was born and raised in Calgary, and I still live in the Calgary area. I am married to an American, coming up on 18 years this fall. We actually have five wonderful, amazing, crazy children. I am a professional photographer and a videographer, as well as I have a degree in communications / digital media and a minor in marketing. So, I am passionate about this industry. I love marketing. I love communications. I think that photography and videography is going to be critical and important to it going forward for a lot of different reasons. This is a little bit about who I am and why I'm doing the show, because I think it's important and there's a lot that we need to talk about. When it comes to marketing, I think, we hear a lot of things that come out of the U.S. because Canadians we consume so much of what the U.S. puts out. And there's so many good thinkers down there. There are so many great marketing professionals. You have so much content that is coming out. There really is a lot of great material. The principles and the concepts are sound. However, the application of them for the Canadian context is going to be different. And I think this is an area that hasn't really been explored that much, especially for Canada. There's a lot of different industries where Canadians are constantly trying to see what they need to be doing, how to market, how to navigate the trends, and there's so much information coming out of the U.S. We can get into trouble when we just take that and apply it straight from one place to another. And, it's a great case study. I might do this here going forward, actually. There are lots of instances where companies from the U.S. have tried to come over into Canada, which is fine. But when they just try to take what they've been doing down in the U.S. and apply it straight across the board to here, it doesn't work out. The greatest example of this in recent memory, it would be Target. Target, they just did not work out here. They made a lot of mistakes, and I will probably actually get into that on one of these episodes. But the Canadian context is very different. In fact, another sort of statistic on this is that whenever American companies take their ads that they ran in the U.S. and apply them in Canada, they have like a 63% fail rate. That's pretty high. So, what else is there that we should know? Well, when we're looking at Canada, we need to understand, again, Canadians know this, most Americans know this. This is common knowledge for a lot of things, but we really are a large country with a small population. In fact, 70% of the population lives below the 49th parallel. All right? We're a large country, small population, and about 50% of our population lives south of Seattle. Just let that one sink in for a minute there. So we've got great distances between cities, great distances between towns. huge areas where nobody's even there whatsoever. It can be a logistics nightmare. There's these distances, how do you communicate, all these sort of things. But that's Canada. One of the things that is actually really good, though, about Canada is that we actually have a very high internet connectivity rate, or internet penetration rate. So we're looking at 94.9% of the Canadian population is on the internet. That's pretty good. However, the U.S. is sitting at 97.1%. So, to put that in perspective, that means that there is 36.6 million Canadians on the internet versus 331 million Americans, all right, on the internet. We are ranked, Canada is ranked 20th in the world, whereas the U.S. is ranked 11th. Those are some pretty big distances, or pretty big numbers as far as the number of people that are online, that are using the internet, that are using social media, that have access to these sort of things. And the reality is it creates very big differences in society, how people relate to each other, and the trends that are there. So as an example, Facebook is actually king worldwide still for social media. Everybody still views it as an old person's app, maybe. That's not very popular for Gen Z. But when it comes to most of the population, they're on it. And they're using it regularly. In Canada, it's really not even close. Facebook is a very clear, distinct winner at number 1. And I believe Instagram is a distant second. YouTube is very popular as well. And X is growing very popular very quickly. The US, though, it has a population that can support experiments. They've got a population that, well, they can support things that at rates that I don't think we kind of fully understand or grasp. So even something where like a social media platform like Be Real, I wonder how many Canadians have actually heard of it or even using it. But roughly 8% of the American population is on it, and we're looking at that as far as statistics go. They actually could potentially have more people actively using it than those who are using Facebook in Canada. Let that one sink in. So, we do have differences that set the Canadian consumer or the population apart. When we get to the Canadian consumer, what we're looking at here is that the Canadian consumer has less expendable income than the average American does. All right, there are many different reasons for this. One is Canadians in general are just taxed more. We are, and we know that. And for a lot of Canadians, it's a point of pride because, as far as what do we do with our tax money? Does it go to healthcare? These sort of things. However you fall on that spectrum, Canadians just know that we are taxed more than Americans are. And we know that there's one thing that's really interesting that comes out of this, that Canadians are more likely to visit multiple grocery stores when they go shopping for food. What does that mean? What does that kind of point to? Well, Canadians are not cheap, but we are value-centric. All right, above all things, we look for value, and we are willing to go the extra mile for a good deal. So if you were to provide a loyalty program and a quality solution for a Canadian audience, you got a winning situation right there. Canadian consumers, they also exhibit conservative shopping habits, and they are very brand loyal. That is a very interesting fact. That Canadians, as much as we are willing to go the extra mile to find different deals at different stores, we're still brand loyal. So what it really means is that Canadians will look for the brand that they like, but at a better deal somewhere else. So there's brand loyalty, and that means that even if sometimes the brand that they love is a little bit more expensive than the generic ones, which it always usually is, they'll go with that. So Canadians, it's kind of a little bit of a basic rundown as far as what your average Canadian consumer is going to be like. It does set us apart from how Americans operate, how Americans purchase, the purchasing habits, and those sort of things. How are regulations affecting Canadian businesses differently than Americans? This right here is an important question and important consideration because as for a business owner, when you are running your business, you know that demographics, psychographics are all going to play a part in how consumers are going to interact with your product or your service. But you also have things like regulatory bodies or regulations. That's always a massive thing that businesses need to be aware of and are always checking in on to make sure that they're on the right side of where they need to be. So regulations play a massive role. When it comes to marketing, it's very important, especially when we're looking at things like how the CRTC, the Canadian Radio and Telebroadcaster Commission, the CRTC, how they're operating, how they're starting to look towards social media, and how they're going to clamp down on that. We got Bill C-18, which is affecting news distribution on social media. For many people who used Facebook for that purpose, it's been very frustrating and very hard for them to find out what's going on or to follow the news the same way they used to. People in Canada are struggling to kind of gather that information the way they wanted to, but actually they're turning towards Twitter, or X, in order to get that information. So it's actually kind of shifting in some of those sort of ways, and that's why I think we're seeing X growing in popularity the way that it has been. I think the interesting or the important thing to understand here is that even though there is like the CRTC and Bill C-18, you see two different commissions and operating levels there that are working on reining in or bringing some control measures around social media. I can't see them actually being able to control it the way that many of us would be afraid that they would or could. There will definitely be measures of control, and some of them may need to be brought back, but the reality, I think, is with the world that we're living in, with the size of country that we have, they actually are not going to be able to hold it back entirely or to clamp it down and prevent, some of the information from being spread around. And so that's actually really good news for businesses. Even though they're going to try to control it, it's just there's too many other things that are at play. So there are regulations that are at play. There are limitations or restrictions, but it's not shutting it down entirely. And there's so much potential there. And when you couple that with the fact that mainstream media in Canada is dying, trust is at an all-time low, and especially when you're in the Western Canadian provinces here, they just don't view mainstream media the same way as they do out east. So this really does depend upon where you're at in Canada and how that's going to work, because that's going to affect, how you market. Are you going to be able to rely upon the traditional channels of marketing? When it comes to radio and television, we all know that they are dying out right now. They are on life support with government funds or tax dollars, and it's not looking good in that sort of sense for there. So they can only keep that entity alive and the way it's been functioning for so long. I mean, even with the tax dollars, Bell Media shut down radio stations just a couple months ago and laid off tons of employees Canada-wide. So we can see that there are shifts, there are things that are happening in Canadian society that are, it's different than it is in the US, and because our population is so small and so spread out, I can't see any other way for it to go than for people to be turning back to social media, even though we already are on it a lot, and relying upon it more and more. Because where else is information going to be received? How else are you going to get your message out there? How else are you going to advertise? Billboards are still up, but they're not as prevalent as they used to be. People are not on TVs the same way that they used to be, so commercials are not happening. People are actually turning more to YouTube, especially in Canada. YouTube, as far as for viewership goes, more people will view programs or things on YouTube than on CBC or CTV. So what we're looking at is it's been a little bit slower in Canada, but there is a massive shift that is happening. And the focus and the reasons around it are all different than they are in the US. And I think in some of the ways the focus or the opportunities are there, but they are still slightly different than what we see in the United States. So then if you are a business and you're wanting to market your product or your service in Canada, what are you going to do? I still think, like I said, YouTube, social media, Facebook is probably going to be one of the best options. I'd say Facebook, YouTube, and even X I would probably even put up there pretty high. I know that TikTok is really big. It all depends on where your audience is and what your market is. If you're going for kind of a global reach, TikTok is going to be phenomenal for a lot of those sort of things. So you really need to also evaluate where those things are at and how you're going to be focusing there. But for Canadian businesses, I mean, we're all going to have our certain pressure points, our pain points, and where are we going to be focusing, and what are the things that you're struggling with. There are many businesses that in Canada right now for 2024, they're struggling to showcase what they're doing in meaningful ways. Many companies have made many promises, and now they're struggling to actually let people know what they've actually done, if they've even done anything. So, then whether it is retaining employees, there's audience engagement, or developing brand competitiveness. All these things are pressure points that are affecting Canadian businesses. Obviously, there's inflation, there's taxation. All these things are at play right now in the Canadian economy. And businesses are trying to figure this all out while the media landscape is shifting. So if you're a business and you've made promises and you need to let people know this is what we've actually done, social media is going to be your best way of doing it. If you are a business and you're completing projects and you want to showcase them and highlight them, again, you're going to want to create video content in order to capture it. You can let it live on your website and social media. You can pin things to the top of Instagram and different pages. There's those sort of options. Maybe you do client testimonials, or you want to show people that highlight employees or do profile videos. All these sort of things are ways in which you need to be able to communicate with your audience, and video is going to be the best way through social media to develop that narrative and tell that story and to connect with an audience. And that's really what audiences are looking for right now, is that connection point. They don't want a generic brand. They don't want a generic business. They're wanting something that is more real to them, more tangible. And that's where that brand loyalty for Canadians really comes into play, because if you develop that, you're going to create that loyalty with them, and you're going to actually retain them going forward. If retaining employees, all right, or attracting employees to your company is something that you as a business owner are focused on or you're struggling with, because there are concerns about the talent pool and how are you going to keep your company staffed going forward, developing your brand is going to be absolutely crucial and essential, because you need to develop your brand to highlight why you're a good company, why the future is bright and rosy at your company, why it's a great place to work. All these sort of things. You want to create that, you want to create momentum, but you want to highlight and showcase that momentum. You want to develop your reputation as for being a great company to work for, a great company to be a part of, and a great company with a great product or service. So all these things, the best way of developing that is going to be through video, through content, and you're going to connect with people through social media. Right now, LinkedIn is probably one of the biggest ones that's up and coming, and there's a lot of people that are talking about it for a lot of great reasons. I would say there's a lot of opportunity for LinkedIn, but LinkedIn is still a very small platform as far as market share goes in Canada. It's big and growing in the US. It's big worldwide. I think it's something that we need to keep an eye on and be focusing in on. But if you're looking at retaining employees or attracting employees, then you're going to want to be focusing in on LinkedIn, because that's where a lot of professionals will be going to and shifting. I'm also seeing a lot of young college grads that are focusing in on LinkedIn and spending time on there as well. So there is a lot of potential for LinkedIn. It's still very small, but that doesn't mean you should ignore it. And like I said, with all of this, the way that you develop that brand and connect with people is through social media, through video, through engaging with people, through your posts, responding to comments and likes and all those sort of things. Oh my, that was a whole lot that was just said right there. But in short, I mean, brand management is going to be very important, and you do this through content creation and video. Yeah. I think I actually might have gone through all my notes there. Let me just give me a second here. I'm going to get better at this, I promise. This is video number 1. But I guess really the biggest thing that I want to stress and highlight is that you as a business in Canada, if you're looking for marketing solutions and for marketing help and for content, you need to get the right help for your context. All right, this right here is a really big thing. That's why I started off the show talking about the difference between Canadians and Americans, because when it comes down to it, you want to have the right help for your context. You need to have the right advice. There are a lot of sound principles and a lot of great concepts that are coming out of the U.S. from a lot of different of their minds that are talking about marketing and all that down there. But when they are just taken from one context to the other, they're going to fail. And for a lot of marketers in Canada, in a lot of ways, there's a weakness for people to mimic what they see in the U.S. or to assume that because it's working so well and so great in the U.S., it will work so well and great here in Canada. And the thing is, I think it will work. I think it's going to work, but it actually has to be modified slightly for the context. So when you're looking to your team for help for marketing, when you're looking to speak with a marketing professional for consultations and those sort of things, you need to be sure that you're getting someone who's going to pull the right concepts and apply them in the Canadian way to your context. That's really the big kind of point and big takeaway, is that Canadians and Americans really are similar, but we are different in a few key ways. And when it comes to marketing and consumer behavior, that's actually a really big way in which we are, in fact, different. Even though we might even be consuming the same products or same content or material, those sort of things, the way in which we do so and interact with them is going to be different. And the way in which you reach out to your audience, reach out to your consumer base and engage with them is going to be slightly different, even though we're talking about one social media platform versus another, or one form of video versus another. So I hope that helps. And I guess really just kind of take that to heart. Think about it. How can... I'd love to talk with some of you guys if you're interested in some of that, as to how we can take these things and apply it to you and your business. And stay in touch till next time. Thank you very much. Wait! Don't go! Because this is my first time, I forgot. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, do all those things that you would normally like to do if you found this helpful and if you'd like to see more content. There we are. I'll get better at this, I promise.